Today, it's nature versus man.
Starting lesson in 3, 2, 1. Okay, here's the deal.
Let's learn!
In the year 20XX, a pandemic spread across the land. But when educational doors closed and communities practiced social distancing, CFI 70's language and literature teacher was still up for the challenge. Join Mr. Strother and his amazing Quaranteam!
Read alouds, news articles, comic books, writing activities, greyhounds, kids who don't even go here, flavored water, dad jokes.
You are now joining Mr. Strother's Quaranteam.
Welcome back, Ballers and Scholars. It's week 8, the final week of remote learning for the 2019-2020 school year. Fitting for the end of the school year during a pandemic, our theme is survival. And since it's week 8, day 1, we're doing a read aloud. Today we're reading a short story called To Build a Fire by Jack London. Our focus is on state standard RL2.1. Analyze what a text says explicitly, as well as draw inferences from the text through strong and supportive textual evidence. So during our reading, be sure to take in what the narrator is saying and doing, and make predictions along the way for how you think the story might end. What I find especially interesting is that there are times where the narrator feels a certain way, but then has evidence that shows something else is happening. It'll make more sense as you read. Jack London. You might recognize the author's name because he also wrote Call of the Wild, which was recently turned into a movie featuring Harrison Ford and a very CGI dog. Call of the Wild is set in Yukon, Canada during the 1890s Klondike Gold Rush, when strong sled dogs were in high demand. The central character of the novel is a dog named Buck. Jack London also wrote a popular book called White Fang. White Fang is the story of a wolf dog that's rescued from a brutal owner and gradually becomes domesticated through the patience and kindness of his new owner, Weedon Scott. White Fang eventually defends Scott's father from attack by an escaped convict. This story, however, is about a young miner who has come to the Yukon to find gold. Sound familiar? The young miner is traveling toward his camp on a cold, windy afternoon against the advice of a seasoned miner. And I don't mean there was a breeze out. The narrator describes it as negative 60 degrees. That's so cold that if you were to pee, it would freeze before it even hit the ground. I mean, frozen pee cold? Heck no. But that's what's so rad about reading. We get to step into others' shoes. Heck, maybe you would brave the weather for some gold. Double trigger alert. There's a reference in the middle of the story to N-word head trees. This story is nearly 120 years old, and at the time it was an old logging term for a black-topped tree. Though I try to stick to readings as closely as possible, it made me feel uncomfortable, so I wanted to give you a heads up. In fact, it's for that reason that I linked someone else reading the book today. Some English teachers believe it's important to read a text word for word, and others don't deal with racism that way. Sorry, fellow English teachers, shots fired. While I can understand the argument for not modifying someone else's writing, and I understand that within context, it was deemed acceptable at the time, but today, and certainly as a white man, it's not acceptable, and it wasn't necessary. In fact, it was not even dialogue or bringing any literary value in my opinion. Just food for thought. Trigger warning number 2 is animal abuse. Occasionally, I've seen students decry the use of a dog, threatening its life by assisting the man and, spoiler, other threats against the dog. But the truth is, it's safe to say that Jack London likes dogs, and Alaskan dogs served a different purpose than being overfed and chasing squirrels like mine. At the time, dogs were highly prized animals who were necessary for the survival of humans in the frozen areas of the north. The man and dog companion in the story help one another, but there are other times where their own survival takes precedence. And sometimes it can be hard to read, but if you stick with it, I think you'll appreciate it by the end. I find the relationship between the man and the dog in the author's descriptions, especially about emotional anxiety and feeling, to be the most interesting parts of the story. I hope you enjoy this story of survival. I don't know about you, but it made me appreciate the warmth of spring. After the read aloud, I have a question for you to think about. And I'm sorry our video is so brief today, but this reading is longer than most first chapters. It's about a half an hour, but it's the whole thing all in one go. So if you don't want spoilers, locate the link in Clever for either the PDF, which is a text-only version, or the text plus audio version that I linked. So pause here and come back after you're done. Whoa, you made it this far. Great job. So here's my question. When we read the story, at what point did you know the man was doomed? Was it before we read the first line, after the final fire was not lit, or at some other point? What did you think would become of the dog? How did you feel when the dog survived? I know I felt relieved. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to drop comments and manage back. Stay warm out there, be safe, and never journey alone. And as always, have a great day.